Hello, everybody, and welcome back to That Milan podcast. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo, alongside you guys. So not really much to talk about. Milan come out victorious over the weekend. Early wake up call for a lot of people over here in the States. Um, so a 2-0 victory, nothing too crazy. So we'll just kind of get into that a little bit. Some of the other stories that are kind of around the club as well. There hasn't been too much news, not much in terms of the sporting director updates either. But again, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify podcasts as well, wherever you listen to your audio podcasts. We greatly appreciate it. It was nice to see quite a few of you return after that Inter victory. So welcome back temporarily. I know you guys are probably not too interested, but it is a victory day. So anticipating more views again. Santangelo, did you get up at 6:30?
6:25 actually. To do that on a Sunday, it's not uncommon for me, especially when it is like golf season, because I do get up early to golf. But to kind of have to roll out of bed at 6:25 and watch this team, and you don't know what type of performance you're going to get from them, given the fact that historically speaking, this 6:30 kickoff in the East Coast of the U.S. hasn't been friendly for Milan. So I kind of did it with a little bit of caution. I was like, all right, let's see if we get something. And Pulisic got us going. So we'll get started on that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Pulisic instantly makes an impact 4 minutes in. Milan could have had multiple goals with this.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was really important for how the performance truthfully played out for them. Being able to score first, we know under the Conceicao era, teams have been scoring first on them, and they've been chasing the game. To go up early against a side facing relegation in the face, this was a good start for them because Venezia then had to chase the game and they weren't really in a defensive shell. Largely by Milan as a team, they performed okay. Certain individuals within this one were really struggling, but I guess we'll just stick on into Pulisic to start this. 50th goal and assist the past 2 seasons. Only two other players within Serie A have done that. That's Adamola Lookman and Lautaro Martinez. So again, Lookman, obviously a left winger. He's been brilliant. A key reason as to why they won Europa League last year at Atalanta. And then Lautaro Martinez, we know how great he was last year. This year, not much the same in terms of output, but still that's one of the better players the league has to offer the past 10 years or so. So again, I mean, this just speaks to the volume of the level that Pulisic was playing at. He had a good game. This wasn't anything special by kind of his standards and how he's played for Milan the past 2 seasons, but he did get man of the Panini man in the match for this. That's his fourth this season. Kind of just speak to the consistency that is Christian Pulisic, because 50 goals and assists in 2 seasons. First time in his career, he is at back-to-back seasons with 10 league goals at least. So, I mean, again, we talk about it often. This change to Milan has been huge for Christian Pulisic's career.
Sure. I mean, I think to even have this sort of segment headline or ticker on this is speaking volumes to how good he's been these past 2 years. And the fact that, he's been this prolific and this consistent and this available, despite Milan not really being where they want to be. I mean, we're talking about last year where they finished top 4, top 5. And then you have this year where they're 9th right now. So this isn't a juggernaut Milan where he's at the very heart of it, which again kind of gives you some sort of hope that if this team is built out a little bit more and there is more support, and maybe you have a more consistent producer at the striker position, which we will talk about, those numbers could be much higher. And I think if you have more options within the team, that naturally your star players seem to feel a little bit more at ease knowing that they don't have to be putting in these top performances. They don't have to be getting a goal or assist per game, right? But I think just kind of generally speaking on the play of Christian Pulisic, I mean, he hasn't skipped a beat this year. I think that many times this year, he's probably been a little bit better than he was last year, although I think last year maybe beginning to end, I thought maybe he was a little bit more consistent. But I think this year versus last year, he had the big Champions League moments this year, which I thought were very crucial. And of course, the Derby goals and things like that. So a really great 2 seasons for Christian Pulisic, and I think it also is just a sign of things to come, because this is a player that has shown that he could be very healthy, very readily available for whoever the coach is, but he could also produce goals and assists in a league that, historically speaking, is not the easiest to come in when you're an outsider and deliver results like he has. So a good performance from him, and especially the fact that Milan were able to kind of use that goal as a launching off point and set the tone for the rest of the game. I thought that was important.
Yeah, and again, it really was just a tidy finish and run by him. I think the link up play with Fofana Gimenez was also key within this. I think
Kennedy Abraham
Fofana,
too, to deflect that ball. That was starting with him too. He pressed
yeah,
up to get that ball
yeah,
over.
yeah. They
Yeah.
were on the front foot to start that,
Yes.
with the energy that they brought out, which I think is kind of a key thing. Because I think they'll probably be approaching that in that fashion of, to know they got 2 days off after this. So clearly, like, Milan are putting all their energy into match days and trying to perfect this system, in my estimation, prior to this cup final. Because again, they still sit 5 points off of eighth place. So it's really nothing to play for in the league. I mean, these teams in front of them keep winning. Milan kept dropping points. But that's besides the fact. Yusuf Fofana, I think one of the funnier statistics, and I know people hate stats, but Fofana for me has been underwhelming quite often. There are definitely pockets and recent matches and flashes where you could see a good player in there, in the right deployment, in the right system. 3-4-3's given him a little bit more freedom that we're able to see what he's able to do in the final third. If he's not shooting the ball randomly and far off target, I think he's been very useful for them. 6 assists this season is pretty understated considering how poor he has been in sort of other areas. Does it kind of change your perception on how his season has been? I think a lot of people are under the impression that him, Reinders, and some of the other midfielders and even other players within this team are victims of being played out of position in a formation that doesn't truly suit them. I think Fofana, to an extent, is one of those players, and we're starting to sort of see that. Because I don't know about you, I know some other people think this. The best Fofana performances this season have been in recent weeks with this formation change.
I think we touched on quite a bit in our previous 2 episodes, I want to say, regarding like Pavlovic, Fofana, Teo, and some of their recent performances, and kind of more or less giving some sort of input on what their future could hold at this team. But I'm inclined to agree with you, Martino, but I also look at the fact that he's added a couple assists in the Champions League. He added an assist in the Coppa Italia. So I think on the season, he actually has 10 goals and assists, 10 goal and assist contributions, which I'll take that for a player that has had to deal with multiple coaches, didn't get into this team until a little later on in the summer market. Again, recall how more dragged out those negotiations were. So this wasn't a player that we had in at the very beginning, not to make excuses, but I think that, you kind of want to give the benefit of the doubt, because I don't think it's easy when you're going through the lateness of coming in, a coach, and then a new coach mid-season, and having to adjust roles and responsibilities. So, I think that there are glimpses, and I think that this is a player that, look, he's 25, 26. I think it would be naive and short-sighted for Milan fans to be like, this guy isn't good, and just judge him based off strictly what's happened this year. I think teams historically have been burned by that sort of logic and thinking. I mean, you can look at Manchester United. I mean, I know they've had their issues with player scouting and development, and players that maybe they bought for a ton that didn't develop the way they thought. But you see firsthand where if you create and foster a winning environment and a healthy environment under a good coach, they're ambitious, the project is headed in the right direction, and there's things to achieve and things to strive for in a given calendar year, I think you can see a lot of players elevate. Remember, just for context, guys, Tijani Reinders didn't have a great first year at Milan. He was largely underwhelming in many aspects. He didn't score as many goals and produce as many assists as he has this year, and many big moments that he has this year. And even look at year one, Sandro Tonali, where a young player, people were saying, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't exercise the option. And I think that having that sort of thinking is going to keep Milan in this perpetual state of rebuilding and constantly overhauling the squad. I think you want to get players that have an understanding of what it takes to play at this club. Look at Rafa, look at Teo, Ismail Benacer, players that in their first year either didn't start right away, and or if they did, they didn't really have this explosive first season. So be patient, guys. I know it's difficult to say that in a year that we're not in getting top four. We're not where we want to be as far as the Champions League is concerned. So I get all that, but I think if you're trying to just think bigger picture here and think towards the future, I think there's some players within this team that people need to give a little bit more grace and patience with. And I think Fofana is one of those players.
Yeah, it's so interesting when we say patience. I have seen a few people say that Fofana needs to be sold. Again, it's just so funny to me when we misprofile players and put them out of positions. Again, I think with certain things with players, they're always in their control. Like Fofana's decision to shoot outside the box and not go near the target quite often. That doesn't matter what position on the pitch he's playing in. That's a decision making negative, I guess you could say, of his that he has. You never want to completely dismiss somebody from trying to attempt things, but it's always within good reason. These aren't really good decisions half the time. It's just sort of blasting away and hoping that you might hit the target or do something with it. And as you mentioned, Reinders, like, look how much better he is when he's closer to goal. Doesn't have to worry about doing different things off ball. I just think that you have to adapt as a manager. And I find it interesting with the Conceicao stuff, because now it's funny to see how more people are slowly saying, well, he did come in middle of the season. It is difficult. It's difficult to adapt to Serie A. He didn't really, have a chance to change up formations until recently, and they're producing well now, and they're getting some results, and they're in the Coppa Italia final. If he wins Coppa Italia final and these last few matches go well, Milan should consider Conceicao, which is just, there's a lot to unpack with that. I would just say, for people who adored Pioli and loved him and really wanted him to stay, despite how some people might forget how poor he was when he first started out at Milan in those first few months. I talked about it in one of the shorts today on TikTok, where I was like, people forget one of his first few matches at Milan was that infamous 5-1 defeat to Atalanta.
Mm-hmm.
That was absolutely embarrassing. They carried that through January, and a lot of people kind of don't remember, up until COVID happened, Milan were still poor. Milan were still performing poorly, dropping points despite investments, despite using some of those new signings from over the summer. It took a while until what happened, Matt. He changed up the formation of the players that he had. And the second Milan adapted to a new formation, results started coming through. Granted, he had a magical 3.5-month break to recoup some of these players' health and stamina in what was a tumultuous season. Conceicao hasn't had the benefit of that. But to me, it's just so funny how fickle this fan base is and how they want to keep people and players just like Jovic, who got ruled out with a back issue prior to this, that a couple good results all of a sudden changes everybody's mind and narrative on what should and shouldn't happen with the club. I just think that the club itself has to reevaluate everything at the end of the season and take everything into account, because there still are some worrying signs with Conceicao. Do you agree that there's some truth to allowing him to stay another year? I think it's a huge decision that I find very funny that people think would be decided now when there isn't a sporting director and all signs point to him leaving. I just don't like. Sure, I guess they go win every game to finish out the year and then does what? Wins Coppa Italia. I'm not even sure. Even if he did that, I don't think that's a guarantee that he stays. I think it's, desperate by some Milan fans to want to hold on to something that they think is going to work out. I like Conceicao, but I don't see what he's done in these few months warrants him keeping his job, I guess.
I think that the thing that is sort of consuming, or that fans are falling victim of, and not just our fan base, but world football in general who follow the sport, is the sport has such a parabolic nature to it, where it's so week to week, where you get those highs of like, wow, we completely dominated Inter. Maybe we should keep Conceicao. If he didn't get the result on the Venezia fixture, people would say, nah, maybe we shouldn't keep him.
Right.
So I think, like, again, like it sounds sort of like a cop out answer to give, but I think truly we need to wait until what the rest of the season holds, because I think that even though that we've seen visibly better performances with a 3-4-3 and some adjustment of personnel and utilization of certain players, I
Yeah.
think we need to kind of see how the season plays out. Like, if we sustain this, and this is a team that can defend through prolonged periods of matches, right? And
Yeah.
this is a couple games in where we've given up what, one goal, right? It was just the game against Atalanta where we
Atalanta,
lost.
yeah.
So if we're able to sustain this, and this is a team that has proven over a month and a half, 8 games, 9 games, where they've shown you they can defend, and players like Pavlovic or Malik Chow or some of these other players have shown you that they can put some steady performances on a consistent basis, I think the conversation does change. I think what's interesting, though, is a lot of the comments being made by Moncada, because this isn't typically someone who's very vocal with the media. He's not usually the one to come out and say this about the market, this about a player, so on and so forth.
Correct, yeah.
But in recent weeks, he's been very vocal about Conceicao. Now, I don't know if this is just him just trying to ease the sort of pressure and soften the blow and criticism that Sergio's faced, because
He
Sergio's
also
been very
appointed him.
vocal when it's come to his future and a lot of the off-field chatter regarding, potential new hires. He mentioned by name Allegri. So he's not naive. He's not, it's not like he doesn't know what's going on, and put it that way. He understands that the jury's still out on him. But I think that the question that Milan fans who are maybe sort of leaning in the direction of Sergio and keeping him versus going the route of getting a new coach or third coach in a year is, what's the concern with going for a guy like Allegri? Second stint at a club, historically speaking, doesn't typically go that well. Again, there are outliers to that. I just think that the team that Allegri had in his previous Milan is not the same team. The pressure to win is not the same as it is right now, because Allegri got that team with still a lot of the remnants of a strong Milan team. You still had Berlusconi, you still had Galliani, you still had those presences around the team. If you get an Allegri and results don't go well and they're not scoring goals and they're not getting the right results, people are going to say they should have just kept Conceicao. He was doing some decent things. They should have given him more time. So I think we still have a lot of things to kind of digest and understand and analyze with the rest of the season. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm not ready to say that Sergio should stay. Do I think that it's easier said than done for us to be, well, he didn't turn it around in 6 months, so he should go? No. I think that we do need to just see the season out. If the sporting director, this is my final point, if the sporting director that we are like hell-bent on bringing in, he speaks very highly of Conceicao, or there's rumors that he actually wants Conceicao. He likes how he works. He thinks he's the guy to get this team forward. I'm willing to give benefit of the doubt and have that conversation, because the last thing you want is, again, year to year to be changing management, coach, players. It's not grounds for consistency. It's really what led Milan to so many abysmal years, is they didn't have stability until Pioli gave them that, and they were able to build something with him.
Yeah, exactly. Which is just so funny to me. And I think my larger point about this and whether or not I want him to stay kind of is, I'm always trapped between this. What do I want realistically? And also my brain is constantly just thinking about what this club is thinking, not me. Because whatever I want it's not in reality. If you guys like thought and knew like what I would say all the time, I am higher, not even close to where they're aiming right now. And I know realistically, to an extent, almost every single box you would check off to be like, oh, we're a big ran club if we do it this way and that way, which is like, bigger purchases in the summer, going for a bigger manager in terms of just reputation and solidity. With this is like, they were literally sitting there just last year, this management, right? Saying to Stefano Pioli, if you win Europa League, you get to keep your job.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes to like with Conceicao now, it's like, oh, as you mentioned, like fans would just be like, if they drew Venezia, he wouldn't be that good, which is like also coming down to the way they manage Fonseca and his sacking. Well, if you win today, you could stay, but if you lose, we might fire you. So we're not really sure.
And
So
then he won, and he was fired anyway.
And then he was fired anyways, and then they let him go and talk. It's just, to me, it's where the decision making lies, and I can't trust any logic or for them to have logic to begin with. It's really frustrating because I think there are clear points to be made for people who say that he should stay, and I think there's obviously fair moves and decisions for reasons why he should go. And I'll just say this before we wrap up to like the second half and move on. Like, okay, Conceicao, what did he control and what did he do well with? What he controlled was taking over a team in distress and winning a trophy. Is it the biggest of trophies? No. Should we go off of too much of that? Also, no. Champions League. Away to Feyenoord was a poor performance. Musa screwed him with that red card against Dinamo Zagreb. I think Teo Hernandez also jumping and diving for that second yellow completely changed that tie and where Milan would have been within the Champions League knockout stages, severely hurt their finances. I can't blame the manager for that kind of stuff. That's not within his control. However, within Serie A against inferior opponents on a week-to-week basis in terms of preparation, figuring out what 11s make sense for him, how he does handling substitutions within matches, using Musa quite too often, subbing him out almost immediately. The João Felix stuff, I mean, how often was he using him when he didn't have to? All that stuff added up on top of poor results, and there was even occasions when Leao was resting, and then Pulisic had injuries that he was also carrying, and the same thing with Leao. I'm not making excuses for him, but certain things are in his control that I like to criticize him for, and other things were out of his control that I simply can't blame someone for because it's illogical. To me, at the end of the day, the decision to keep this manager should not depend upon winning a trophy or doing well in the final 4 matches of the season when you're in ninth place. Keeping a manager like this is because you have a clear, concrete plan heading into next season and beyond, and you believe that this is the man to lead you in that direction. If he's not, then that's okay to get rid of him. Present a plan and have it make sense for once, because the way that they're making these decisions further proves what a lot of people are saying and thinking is that you have no idea what you're doing. And that's the one thing I need Milan to prove me wrong on when they head into next season.
Also,
Do you actually have ideas? Yeah, go ahead.
Also, too, I think that it's worth pointing out that, Pioli gave Milan 5 years, right? 4.5, 5 years, 2019 midseason, basically the first 8 games until end of last year. That was not a Jerry Redbird signing. That wasn't, make no mistake about it. Like that Stefano Pioli reign was largely down to Elliott and previous management ownership. So now you're going based off of what's Redbird's track record, right? What's management's track record when it comes to not just player recruitment, but coaches? Because so far, it's pretty clear he got fired mid-season. Fonseca wasn't a good hire.
Yeah.
And so far, you can make a strong case that despite the Super Cup and potentially a Coppa Italia, a 9th place finish, crashing out in the Champions League, the manner in which they did, that's been their second bad hire. So they've had 2 bad hires at the coaching position in one season, right? And the only 2 they've had, that's 2 over 2. That's not good, right? So that's where I think people have to kind of look at this and think, okay, if they're so in and out, hot and cold on players, coaches, week to week, and you can't buy into everything that the media is saying, but Luka Jovic, he's gone. Maybe he stays. Maybe he gets a new deal. This guy needs to go. Well, maybe he stays. Maybe he curls out. We actually like him. Maybe you want to keep him. But then if you have a bad game, he's gone. I think that sort of thinking and approach by management, by ownership, is a big cause for concern, because they're not saying, this is the guy, we're sticking with him, we're going to give him all the time in the world. Or they're not like, if you're going to make a decision, then stick with it. Like, that's what I think almost fans want to see. Like when it comes to players, especially, because if you're so year to year on players, that's not going to work. That's not sustainable.
It's not a plan.
It's not a plan. It's just throwing darts and hoping something sticks.
Yeah, and then the second something sticks, whether or not it's going to stay on the wall, they latch on and be like, yes, we're holding on to the one positive. Like the Jovic thing is so silly to me, right? Like that's the biggest example of laughing, and it's not even to be like, oh, he deserves to stay. He doesn't. It's the decision and when they make it. Like they're making this decision based off of a couple of matches.
Like, what if he doesn't score the rest of the season?
Saying,
what if he gets no goals the rest of the season?
Yeah, exactly. He already has a back issue after he just played. He had injury issues.
What if he doesn't play? He doesn't get a goal. Are you going to be like, nah?
How does that bode for Francesco Camarda? Where does he fit into that plan? Because you're saying you just bought a $30 million striker. You also want to keep Tammy Abraham, and then you want to keep Luka Jovic, but your director that isn't your director or doesn't have final say on in decisions, and Zlatan, where Zlatan is like, oh no, Camarda is not going out on loan, he's staying. So his decision to keep him was based off of him and his playing time and how he could develop at the club. Meanwhile, you guys are now wanting to keep 3 strikers, all of which will likely be ahead of your teenage starlet in that pecking order. What is the decision on Liberali? Like, he's still playing with the Primavera. Like, he scored today with the Primavera. Like, there isn't really any concise decision making on quite a few players' futures, and on top of it, managers and management. That's just why it's so fickle. That's why it's so poor, and we really can't go off of too much of anything that they say or do because it's week to week, just like the team's performances on the field. There's nothing consistent about this club other than the actual drama that they bring upon themselves. I don't know, just laughable. Speaking of one of their January signings, Santi Gimenez got on the score sheet. I know we got off track with the game.
Sorry.
This was just nice to see. The Rangers assist was great. Speak to Santi within this. Didn't look like he was going to get much playing time down the rest of the season. With Jovic's back ailing at this point, he gets one, and he put himself in position a couple of times in this matches. He missed that one header. I forgot who crossed it over to him.
Yeah.
If he timed it better, he would have had a brace in this. You have mentioned it quite often. I think a lot of people have started to notice, and this is what Santi Gimenez basically is. He's pretty good at putting himself in position to score goals. He is decent at taking his chances, meaning he's fairly efficient, I guess we could say, from what we've seen with his opportunities. But however, when the team does not have the ball, when they're not working great off of it, he kind of is just there. And that's not the greatest of things. And for him to be successful, this Milan needs to improve in those areas in which are massive weaknesses right now. But honestly, it's just a cool, calm finish. Again, not easy to kind of do this when your play has been stagnated. And again, much like Conceicao, Matt, it's really difficult to adjust to Serie A and how people will defend you and how you have to approach that. Speak to Santi getting that goal, and then Rangers, by the way, as well. That was an awesome assist.
Santi needed this one. I think that, even prior to the goal, I tweeted out in a now deleted tweet because I didn't want to become a meme, but someone did catch on to it. They said, I saw this. I saw what you tweeted. And I don't think I wouldn't backtrack. I just deleted it because I didn't want to be, having to deal with people in my mentions. But he just looked like he was struggling to kind of belong within the match. Yeah. And then it's not easy when you come off the bench and you're playing 15 minutes, 17 minutes in a match where you're up 1-0. So you're maybe not going to take as many risks going forward. And given the fact that his form hasn't been that great since the first couple weeks of when he arrived, I'm not going to walk that back. But it was great for him to get the goal. And I think that, this was the type of opportunity, or this was the type of goal you wanted to see him break this funk. Not the attempt against Napoli, the missed penalty. That's not the time and place. And as we mentioned at that time in the post-match of that loss, that tie, right? Was it the Napoli? I'm forgetting here. The Napoli game.
You said the penalty miss was a loss, 2-1.
Loss, 2-1. We could have tied that game.
He should have. Yeah, they could have won it.
That wasn't the opportunity to give him and have.
Yeah. We went over. Yeah.
In a match like this where you're up, okay, the team is inferior.
We literally said the reverse Venezia, where the one at San Siro where they were giving the penalties to Tammy's, like the point we made, I think.
Correct. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So for him to get the goal was, I think, it just it kind of calmed him a little bit. You could see wasn't super emotional, but I think like he knew in that moment, and his teammates did in that moment, knew like he needed this one. We're happy that he got this one. You know, the social media comments, the post-match stuff, like you could tell he really needed a goal. And I think this kind of, I'm gonna revert back to my comments that I've made in previous episodes, and even when we did our January recap of Santi and some of the other signings, and specifically Santi because that's what we're talking about now, is coming into Milan midseason from Feyenoord, from the Dutch league. There's a lot of pressure to deliver goals. Guys, have a little bit of patience. Like, I understand there's been moments where he's been frustrating. I get that. Who hasn't been frustrating this team? Even our best players have been frustrating at times this year. I think this is a good striker. I'm not going to say he's a world beater. I'm not going to say he's the individual that's going to score 40, 50 goals a year like Goyerkes from Sporting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But I think that we've gone through and recycled so many different strikers and so many players in this department that I think we need to be a little bit patient, because I do agree with you, and I do stand firm on my sentiments that I think this is a player that when we're a little bit more well drilled, we're a little more fluid, more functional, and the attack is moving the way it needs to, this is a player that can bag goals with
absolutely
and more efficiency. So I don't think it's an easy situation, given the fact that even Sergio's like, he's in a position where he has to go with the hot hand, the guy that can give him the most certainties and guarantees. And that's been Tammy. That's been Jovic. And Gimenez has also just recently returned from an injury, you know? So I think that kind of we're in that delicate phase where you don't want to put him in. And maybe this is just a working theory that I've had, where maybe Sergio is in a position where he understands that Santi wasn't in a good moment. He was struggling. He wasn't scoring goals. I don't think he wanted to add insult to injury and fracture this guy's mentality and him mentally. Because if you keep playing him and you're not getting results and he's not scoring goals, how many people are going to clip his stats? 12 matches, 13 matches, 1 goal. He hasn't scored in 3 months.
Yeah.
I think that you have to kind of also protect your assets in certain respects of the game. And I think it's kind of one of those things there. This isn't to say we need to coddle players, because Santi needs to deliver. This is a player we invested quite a bit in. But I think at this time of the season, I think it's a bit of a luxury where you've gotten some decent production from Jovic before, obviously with the back injury. You've gotten some decent production from Tammy. You don't really need to lean so heavily and be so reliant on Santi to give you goals. If he sprinkles in these good 15, 20-minute cameos and gets you a goal here and there to build his confidence, you can go into the offseason with that, and you can say, okay, like this guy did some good things down the stretch, give him a full season, training. I think we can move forward with that. So it was great to see him get this goal. Yeah. He absolutely needed it.
Yeah, honestly, like relatively productive within Serie A. We're talking about 4 goal contributions in 600 minutes. Like, that's not
We've seen worse at this club, guys.
And he could have had more. He bags a penalty, I've made this point to like a lot of people, and everyone is just freaking out because they're like, you're the striker at Milan. You have to be this. You have to be that. We paid all this money for you. And again, I'm trying to tell everybody this. They paid 28 million euro for a striker. Guys, that's not that much. That's not that much money. Okay? They didn't even pay 30 million for a striker. Do you realize that in 2025, the best and most premium of strikers are going for at least double that? At least double. Okay? Dom Solanke went for like 80 million pounds. Like, and he's a fine player, but like, there's levels to this shit. And I think the levels in which these purchases are going are not within, this whole, this guy has to be like the guy. What my point is, it's like you see a player purchase for like 28 million, right? And a lot of people just like jump to this thing where they're like 28 million, got to produce immediately, got to produce right now. And if you don't, you should leave because you're not good enough, which is funny to me because 28 million euro, right? Say he's not utterly dominant this year. He's not. He gets 4 goals for Milan, so far within the 15 matches. Whatever he does to end the year. And you go into next season, and this is a player who across all competitions, Matt, says gets you around 15 goals. And you consistently have that. where you don't have to sell that player, but when you have a plug and play guy within your squad that guarantees you 15 goals, say he stays here for like 5-6 years, suddenly that 28 million is like, oh, that was well worth the deal. Like, we're talking about a
Yeah.
guy who's gotten over 50-60 goals within this club. That's a very fine purchase. Like if he's going for 70 million, you're like, got to be in contention for Capo Cannoniere every single year, have to at least get 20 goals a season. And on top of that, everything just triples in terms of expectations. Guys, I think he's just going to be a good, fine striker, and that's okay sometimes. You don't have to be insane. So, like Diogo Jota for Liverpool, for example, he's productive. They bought him for like what, 40 million years ago, and look at that age. Like if you're saying like, oh, there's a 40 million euro player, well, it's like he produces on a consistent basis outside of his injuries for years. That's fine. Like you don't have to get this like bulk of insane seasons is my point. And the way people are talking about like Moneyball, like dude, like Santi has like cost like 5 million more than like Chukwueze, for example. Chukwueze went for a lot for a guy with 1 year left on his deal and a winger and virtually done nothing for the club. Like you know what I'm getting at? Like there's just ways that they're going to try and replicate production in terms of goal scoring output. Because here's my final point on this before moving to Reinders and the preview. Milan are a club that if you think they work in Moneyball, they're going to be approaching signings in Moneyball like that. We can't buy an 80 million euro striker named Benjamin Sesko, Victor Gyökeres, Victor Osimhen, right? Milan can't afford that. They've accepted that. Those guys, they're not even going to bother looking at. Why? Because they cost 60, 70 million. That's basically Milan's entire budget. They're not going to be putting all their eggs in one basket for a player. What they're going to do is say, okay, 28 million for Gimenez here, and this is also why everything's backfired on us because we don't go for proven players. We're going to go 28 million here for Santi Gimenez. We're going to sprinkle some money over there. Maybe that one will work out. And that way, instead of getting, guaranteed 20 goals from one striker that they put all their money towards, they're going to be like, Santi will give us 10 to 15 there. We'll get 5 from like Tammy Abraham, maybe another 10 goals from him. And there you go. There's your 30, 40 goals for the season. That's how we're going to get it. That's how these clubs look at it. That's how a club like Milan, who is playing Moneyball, is going to look at it. Because Moneyball was literally based around the Athletics not being able to keep Jason Giambi and his numbers that he produced, but rather grabbing players who can equate to those numbers. Yeah. Simple. That's the way this has always worked.
That's why they're going to be buying. Atalanta have worked in a way, and again, that's probably like an easy comparison to make. But like, when they got rid of or sold some of their top players, they're not going to sit there and say, well, we can replace Coop Miners, right?
Yeah, like for like. They're not doing it like for like.
Like ideally, you want a similar profile because you're trying to play a similar way of football. But if you're able to get 2 players that you can kind of rotate in and out, that can get you 15 goal contributions in Serie A, you can get good results there. I think that's kind of it to an extent. I'm fine with that. I think that people also have to be very realistic. Yeah. I'd love for this club, and then we could talk about this with market stuff coming up and closing days of the season, but like it's going to be another summer of us being a little bit more calculated with our signings, especially. Absolutely. Look, if things didn't change last year, if we weren't going for the $40, $50 million signing last year, we're not doing it this year because we don't have Champions League. Newsflash, that's the reality. So just kind of think like that. This team, this management, they've operated in a way where they've shown you they're comfortable spending and making those sort of calculated risks and risks in quotations on the market. They pick their spots, and typically they like to sit in that 20 million range, low 20s, mid 20s with bonuses, which is what Santi came for. I think it was 25 plus bonuses, right?
Yeah. So if all goes well, it goes to like 30.
Correct. I think
35.
Isak and Sempre Milan, they came out with like the details of the deal. So if you guys are interested, we can share that. But like that's kind of where we're at here. So just with signings like this for a young striker that has proven that he can also deliver in the Champions League, I think that, again, another player, and I know it's difficult. I know it's hard for many Milan fans because everyone's so emotional and week to week, this guy sucks. And this guy's pretty good. We should give him a new deal. This guy, we should give him the number 9 shirt. Like, that's how people live. Me, I don't like that. I've seen worse players at this team, much worse. I know what a good player looks like. I'm not saying my assessment and appraisal of certain players is always on,
You're
but
not
I'd
batting
like to think
1,000. No one
that
is.
Santi is a player that within this attack, within a more functioning team, in a better environment, he's a player that can give you 12 to 15 goals in a season.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and I think a lot of people are like disappointed in that fact, and it's like, again,
it's hard to get 20 goals in a Serie
there's
A
like,
season.
if I could like draw up a graphic for you guys and like to break this down, it's so much more in depth. And I'm just saying, and this is like where football is right now, and it's kind of like this in baseball, even though like younger baseball fans are kind of moving in that direction. The disconnect in how management and ownership view things as opposed to fans, and how teams are with money, it's just completely different. And I'm not saying the fans are wrong at all for wanting to aim higher. I think they're 100% dead on. And when you're owning a team like this, you need to act like it, and you need to have that capital ready to go, or at least have the investors lined up to do or give you something like that. When you're like playing poker, is this the moment where I go all in? Is this where I take a little risk and I am able to get something more out of it? Because we knew that they didn't take risks. They didn't want to put more money towards signing. In fact, they really ran in the opposite direction, and now it cost them even more money, which is exactly what we've been talking about ever since this ownership really took over. And how they've been going about things is just so silly to me. And yeah, I just think that like Santi Gimenez, at the end of the day, if you're expecting someone to be like Sheva, I think that's kind of on you. I again, this is not like I agree Santi's my first choice. It's never been about that. What I'm just telling you is the player at the club right now is not this guaranteed 20 goal scorer a season in the league, and that's just something we're gonna have to deal with it. But I also urge you on the side of caution, where I say the past two Scudetto winning Milan teams did not have a scorer over 15 goals or more in the league. So you could win trophies in that sense, and I'm not saying this team is going to do that. It's just I don't know.
I'll
Just
say this
temper
too.
some expectations.
I'll say this too, and this is my final point on this. If you're able to build out a functioning team with a system that is fluid and works, you can get guys to produce goals. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that. But if you're building a team that is consistent and sharp and in the final third has the right decision making, you can get strikers that can produce. Even on Giroud's last legs, and I hate to compare it to, because Giroud is a striker I respect quite a bit. I thought he's had a great career. But like, guys, if you have the certain qualities to get into certain areas, I think with these attackers, I think with Tijani, Leao, Pulisic, whoever else we get to support in the attack, I think that if you're a more operating team, you can produce at this level. It's not going to be 30 goals, but you're seeing firsthand Moise Kean goes to a different team. Team is fluid, right? Team's operating pretty well. Look how he's producing. Look at Retegui. He didn't do that at Genoa. He didn't even do that at what was it, River Plate?
I believe so, yeah.
He didn't even do that there.
River.
Look at him. In a good system, functioning team, look how these guys are producing. So I think that's the crucial thing here. Get the right coach, get the right system. Now all of a sudden your striker can reap the benefits of a functioning team, a functioning attack.
Well, yeah, and it's so funny. And lastly, on the point, it's like, oh well, Leao's numbers are down. He's doing worse. But yet this team is conceding less goals. It's like, well, guys, just because first of all, on per game basis, they're conceding as much as the eighth best team in Serie A in terms of that. They're ranked eighth in goals conceded per match. It's not good at all. It's not even close. Yeah. So like when people are like, oh well, they conceded a lot more goals last year. What happened?
They were like 10th or 11th last year in goals.
Correct. Yes. They've had this shaky foundation. They've been really bad in the middle. Every single time we talk about Milan as a negative, we're like, oh, well, they can't hold possession of the ball. They've ranked 8th in the league in terms of possession per matches. The only team below them that's ahead of them in the standing is Napoli. And Napoli have a 10 times better defense and structure than Milan do. So what does that tell you? If you don't have that elite structure, then you're not going to be able to survive with a lack of possession like that. And every single time Milan is out of possession, they are the worst big team outside of Manchester United in the entire continent of Europe in terms of playing out of possession. They have to be. They're so bad. And you're telling me every single time that Leao, Pulisic are supposed to do something, the strikers are supposed to do something, if midfield can't hold on to the ball, if the defenders are marking so poorly, if you don't have a foundation, you're not going to have a house, and your house is your attack. It's just so funny to me how people don't recognize the direct correlation and domino effect that this causes when you don't have a good defense, when you don't have a good midfield. It's like showing fire to a caveman. Like, hey, I don't know if you know this, you're going to have a tougher time winning if your defense and midfield sucks. Oh my God, what a concept. And then people are just stunned by it. And then they start blaming the forwards, who are the only ones actually doing their job half the time. Speaking of which, assist by Reinders was great on this goal. So just a shout out to him there. Previewing and just doing this quickly with Genoa, because we kind of spoke on things, rambled a little bit. So we apologize. But
I'm sure people like that stuff.
Yeah, I know. There's just so much nuance to these things. Genoa. I mean, whatever. For me, dude, like, just where's Bartezaghi? Give my guy some heavy minutes here. I don't care if Tammy or Santi start in this one. If Rafa wants to play in this one, sure. Like, I think now is like where you get certain young players more game time. Could we see Florenzi get a quick cameo here? Does Gimenez start again? I think Teo is in there. Fofana. Bondo hasn't really seen many minutes recently. I'm curious to see what happens with that, because Milan not only have this match against Genoa, it's a quick turnaround against Bologna twice in the league, and then obviously for Coppa Italia. I don't know. For me, whatever happens with this. They're not really moving out of 9th place. Most likely has to be one out against Genoa. I think it's Genoa, Monza, Roma, and Bologna, I believe, are the final 4 matches.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Just, I don't really care. Whoever gets goals in this is just, it's stat padding for me, but I'm going to celebrate it all the same. I don't know. I see like a 1-1 or a 2-1 here in this instant. It's whatever. This is Milan Genoa. It's a snooze fest. If you have other things to do that are better, go and do those.
Just looking at some quick stats on Genoa. So they sit right now 13th in the table. So Milan aren't too far ahead of them. I mean, Milan's got more points, but like league positioning wise, they're 13th. They have 29 goals scored in 34 games. So this isn't a team that scores a lot of goals. I think Piemonte is their highest goal scorer with like 8 or 9. They got 39 points, so they're comfortably, like, they're safe. They're not even in question to get relegated like Venezia were, which is something I highlighted last week.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, I think that this is one of those things where, you know, maybe Genoa uses it as an opportunity to experiment a little bit, or they go at Milan saying, hey, we got nothing to lose. Like, maybe we go and play certain players that we want to see more of, and we try to, you know, play aggressive on Milan, who are susceptible to giving up goals. But I think I'm in the same camp as you are, because I think ultimately, I think Milan are still going to be too far off to get into the Europa League on points.
Yeah, in the league, yeah.
It's just really going to rest on the Coppa Italia match against Bologna in a couple weeks. So, to your point, yeah, like, I'd like to see certain players, you know, get that opportunity. I'm not saying that you want to completely punt on the game, because I'm not a firm believer in just losing games and like, okay, we're going to go out there and we're just going to put 11 new guys out there and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I think that, again, I want to reiterate this from a couple weeks ago. I still want to see certain things within this team. I want to see that this 3-4-3 can play consistent, can still prevent goals, do the right things, you keep a structure, do the right things in the midfield, win possession, you establish order there. And for the forwards, right? If Luka Jovic can't go in this game, is it Tammy? Maybe it's Santi. Maybe
it looks like Jovic is doubtful for it.
So I'm actually gonna go 2-0 in this game, Milan, because I don't see much of a threat from Genoa. Now, if Milan are in a position where they're feeling generous and they want to give a penalty, well, then maybe that's where the goal comes from. Truthfully, I think that I feel a little bit better about this Milan team. I know it's come, unfortunately, on the 29th of April, where we're on the way out of Champions League, and we don't really have that in sight. But yeah, like, guys, let's see that we can consistently defend well, keep clean sheets. I think Magnon's played quite well the past month. I think he deserves that opportunity to get these clean sheets. He's done a lot for us. Let's keep that momentum going. And I think it's
He's had a
important
really
going
good
in.
2025.
Yeah.
I thought he was a little bit weaker in 2024, but 2025 has been very good.
And
Just a
we
couple
want to go
key.
into that game against Bologna riding high. Like,
But
get Santi going.
Bologna's
Get
been
some of these
picking
guys,
up.
you know.
Bologna's been picking up injuries. They just dropped points against
Yeah.
Udinese. Like they're in a.
Let's full
I'm
steam
going
ahead,
to
guys.
highlight
Like,
these things. A couple absences real quick that are pretty key for Genoa within this. Miretti had a really solid season for
yeah,
Genoa.
he
I
did.
think that
The
was a
winter is
really
good
nice
too,
sort
I
of
think.
breakout season. Took him a little bit longer than some people might have liked regarding that, but hey, he's just going to be 22 at the start of next
Yeah,
season.
that's
So
big.
he's going back to Juve, so we'll see how they handle that. Who knows with the way they've been doing things. Malinovsky out. Maturo. We'll see. Ekuban. Ekuban is one of those very annoying, good Serie A mid-table players that you just hate to go up against. And our good boy Hugo Cuenca, former Milan Primavera and Futuro player, is got a muscle injury, so he won't be in this one. Emerson Royale is back in training in case anybody was interested in that. Luka Jovic is doubtful with back issues. I bet Tammy will start in this one. Maybe Santi gets one. I think Tammy is better off playing against Genoa in the way that their style is. Yeah, so for me, listen, you have 2-0. I'll go with 1-0. For me, I think that this is a whatever sort of match. I think you're right in saying that you want to see how players play within this system. I think we'll get a better idea of how good they can be when they go up against a Genoa and Roma because they have far more to play for. This, it's kind of, I feel I have a tougher read getting off of the sense of like, okay, maybe these guys are trying to prove it against a lesser opponent late into the season. They're missing guys. Like to me, it's just funny how that might work out. But that's pretty much it for me. Commenting on this Milan situation. We'll try and get you guys an episode next Tuesday on the 6th. I will be away, so I won't be there for the both Bologna matches, I believe. So Matt'll probably just have to guide you guys via Twitter or just check out his stuff over there until I get back. I'll probably be back on the 16th. We'll see if Milan are Coppa Italia champions by then. But for now, they play Genoa. And Sant'Angelo, just give you guys a quick follow update on where to go and find you.
Sure. Twitter, X, @Matt_Sant'Angelo. Hoping to get back into some writing very soon, more long form stuff. I think this season's kind of taken a lot out of me when it comes to just dissecting and analyzing Milan on a week-to-week basis. So I've kind of put that aside for a little bit. But if you guys are interested, I do also put out like bi-weekly Serie A fantasy content. So if that's something that you guys dabble in, be sure to check out my Twitter account. That's where I post everything, share everything. So thank you guys for the support, whether it be on a personal level with this podcast, with all the likes, subscribing, all the support when it comes to TikTok, the reels. I know Martino's been a workhorse with that, so I want to give him his flowers. But we appreciate a lot of the support, especially on our recent episode. It's nice when we have a win and we can kind of rally around that and be excited around that. So let's hopefully keep it going this weekend and the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, follow us everywhere. That Milan podcast, that Milan pod on Twitter, Instagram. TikTok is blowing up. I'm doing big numbers over there. We're consistently getting a lot of reach. A lot of people like all the topical like videos that I do on there. Some of those do reappear here on YouTube, and they also appear on Instagram from time to time, but no guarantees. If you're interested in more unique conversational TikToks, go over there. We're growing pretty quickly, so I'm very happy with the progress that we made. Again, you can follow me at Martino Puccio on Twitter, at Martino_Puccio on Instagram. And again, if you're interested in any other sports and stuff, obviously subscribe to this YouTube channel, our other YouTube channel as well. Trying to go live post-match. I just haven't been around for these games in order to do that. I should hopefully be able to on May 5th. So after the Genoa match, I'll try and go live for you guys. Other than that, we appreciate you so much. See you next time.